All righty, there we go.
All right, everybody. I have
All right,
Justin
how you
McQuerry,
doing?
Texas's own Justin McQuerry. Hey, were you born in Texas or did you move here or what?
I was not. I was born in Washington State, but moved to Texas when I was 2 or 3 years old. So
Ah,
it's
okay.
kind of the only place I know.
Yeah. I moved to Texas when I was 9, and I was born in Ohio. So I got here as
Nice.
soon as we could,
That still counts in my book.
except for the heat. So, but you're in Belgium right now because you're about to
Yes,
do
sir. Yeah, yeah.
uh, UCI Worlds Gravel, UCI Gravel Worlds, however we want to say it. So,
No, it's yeah. I racing the UCI Gravel World Championships for the
yeah.
second time for the USA Elite Team.
Uh-huh.
Races a week from today, Sunday, October 6th.
Right.
Starts in Halle, Belgium, and we race 183 kilometers on on gravel and cobblestone and road from Halle to Leuven, Belgium, which are just east of Brussels.
So is it point to point or does it do a loop?
It's yes, it is point to point, but there are two 35K loops in Leuven, so it's a yes on both of those.
Okay. Yes. So then 183 kilometer miles for us in the United States is 113. That's
Yep.
a long ride, man.
Yeah, it's not Unbound, but it's gonna be a long
Yeah,
day for sure.
yeah, that's going to be a long way. So do you think the course and oh, Emily's going to join us here in a second. She's excited
Perfect.
to see you. And
Nice.
uh is the course considered difficult? Have you gone out and had a chance to pre-ride it?
Yeah, actually, the last 2 days I've ridden the entirety of the course. So I've got full recons already done. This it is a challenging course in different ways than certain courses for sure. It's pretty narrow and pretty technical in sections,
Uh-huh.
but those sections are separated by a lot of like rolling terrain that's kind of wide open. So
Yeah.
it's really going to be I think it's going to be a very tactical race, and positioning and having a strong team to help position key athletes at certain points is going to be really crucial for whoever ends up on top.
Yeah, so how long do you go? A big thing for people listening to this, a big thing with like mountain bike and well, with off-road races is, how fast does it narrow down to a single track, you know? So like when we do the Hugoland in Fredericksburg,
Mhm.
one of my favorite things about that race is it's half a mile to a mile of like gradual uphill on Jeep trail, right? So it's
Yep.
got some time before it turns to that single track drop in. And it's so cool that we've raced on some of
Yeah.
the courses, so we can actually talk about this kind of stuff.
No,
So,
definitely. And
does is the race, is Worlds going to do that same kind of thing, or how fast is it going to go into a single track?
pretty impressively, it's like 400, 500 meters off the start line.
Oh,
Um, it's pretty immediate,
yeah.
but I will say the first so we start in the city of Hala, and to get out of the city, we basically hop on a bike path for a little bit, and then kind of do some weaving through a couple city streets, and then we're on to
Oh,
one of a relatively technical, and when I rode it, it was pretty muddy section of gravel slash like single double track.
okay.
Um, it's not really single track, but there's really kind of only one line through it, so
Uh-huh.
it's not like a gravel road at all. And in the first 5K, there's really only a couple hundred meters where it's going to be kind of bunched up, but
Oh,
this first section, it's the start of the race. So if there's separation that happens, I think it's all going to come back together
okay.
um, for a little bit. But at it's kilometer 18 or 19, we're on a long road section leading into this point, and then there's I'd say 800-meter single lane descent into like two back-to-back 5-minute climbs or hills. They're
Yeah.
not really climbs, but they're going to be uphill efforts for sure.
Okay.
And that section is, I think, going to be a very, very important part of the race, especially with so much road leading into it.
Hmm.
There's an opportunity for anyone that got distanced in the or is out of position in the first couple kilometers to really get where they need to be before these two first real climbs of the race.
Okay. Yeah. So that was a big question, is like, if you get pinched out. Well, actually a bigger question is you've haven't you raced a bunch of UCI stuff in the past year enough to get a decent starting spot? What do you think your call-up place is going to be? Did you?
So I have done a lot of UCI races this year. Unfortunately, I have performed not super well at them. So I was given a wild card spot for the USA team,
Uh,
and unfortunately for me, the wild card started at the back. So I've got some work to do, but I
yeah.
have experience doing that from last year, being the last rider across the start line at Worlds. So it's not something it's not something I'm not used to.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, but with lots of, like you said, there's spaces where when I watch I'm not at the front of gravel races, but when I watch your videos, which people should definitely go check out, it's some of the most awesome
Thank
videos
you.
of gravel racing, and gravel racing videos from the pros like you at the front is some of the best video on YouTube, period. Like of anything out
It's
there, because it's one, it's real, and two, it's so crazy, like how intense it is. It's nail biting, like to watch what's going on. But what I've noticed is because it's on a road at times, there's space for people to shoot up alongside that have been, pushed towards the back. And
Yep.
then I know like Keegan is going to be notably absent this year. But he started towards the back and he worked his way all the way up to fifth, I think, last year, which was remarkable.
Yep.
Means
Yeah.
there's room to
Similar.
pass on these things, right?
Yes and no. The course this year is definitely a little different as
Uh-huh.
in terms of how narrow and technical it is right off the start.
Mhm.
But that being said, there aren't, like, similar to last year, there aren't any climbs for a little ways into the race.
Okay.
So even though it's technical and narrow, it's kind of only one line, one good line through a lot of the stuff at the beginning.
Mhm.
And if it's a world championship, everyone's strong, so
Yeah.
it's going to be able to regroup and kind of stay together at least until these first two back-to-back climbs.
Is Vanderpool going to be in the race? I heard a rumor that he might be.
There, it's still a big question mark on that. We haven't seen an official start list yet, so
Yeah.
we'll see soon.
Would that be crazy? Like you're lined up. Yeah, you'll be towards the back,
Yep.
but I mean you're
Yeah.
in the same race with Vanderpool.
Yeah.
That's
Had
crazy.
Wout in the race last year, potentially
Yeah.
Vanderpool this year, so we'll
Yeah,
see.
that's so cool. Yeah. Okay, so then you're going to be on an Ibis brand
Yes.
bike. Okay, so tell us
Yep.
about the bike.
Yeah, so set up for the race. I'm still debating on tire choice, but frame wise, running the Ibis Haka MX
Uh-huh.
from Ibis,
Hmm.
running bird wheels, and then a one by
Oh,
drivetrain with a 48 tooth chainring up front.
okay.
But yeah, your eyes kind of perked up with bird wheels, and I'm a big fan of them.
Yeah.
They have been the biggest game changer to what I've noticed, performance wise, and yeah, just straight up performance wise,
Yeah.
and enjoyment wise on the bike, especially in gravel.
Yeah.
They're super light, but they've also got a little bit of vibration dampening in them,
Yeah.
since they're not standard spokes, so they really take a lot of the chatter out of gravel, which even running a big tire, you're gonna be feeling that.
Yeah.
And when you don't feel like you're totally wrecked, like physically, like
Uh-huh.
your back, your butt, your arms, your shoulders, aren't totally wrecked after a gravel race. It's one, a it's unique,
Uh-huh.
but it also means you're going to recover faster.
So, so Bird Wheels, BYRD, is the wheels that have the fiber spokes, like
Mhm.
a cloth, like a rope, kind of
Yep.
nylon, but it's not. It's Dyneema, I think is what it is.
Dyneema. Yep.
And
Yeah.
so off road, I don't. Off road, I bet those wheels, they're so light, and then that vibration dampening in that, I bet they save probably 10 watts per wheel, if not more than that, in like just the quality of the ride and the lightweight and the ability with off road, right? You're constantly like having to hit the brakes, accelerate, hit the brakes, accelerate. So the fact that the wheel's so lightweight
Yep.
to spin back up again, like, because I come from a triathlon background, once you get up to speed, a lot of people run a heavy disc wheel in the back to keep momentum going, but with
Yeah.
off-road, you want the opposite. You want to be able to re-accelerate like crazy.
Oh,
And
100%.
yeah,
Especially for this course that we have on Sunday. There's a
yeah,
lot of turning and a lot of up and down all day. So it's not going to be a consistent speed for
yeah,
very much.
yeah. That's so cool that you're on bird wheels. I didn't know that. That's awesome. So
I'm super stoked on them.
yeah, what do you like most? Are the Ibis frame, is it titanium or carbon, and what do you like
It's
about it?
carbon frame. It's kind of a cyclocross style geometry, so it feels pretty close to. I come from a road racing background, so
Uh-huh.
geo wise, it feels pretty close to what I have been racing on as far as a road bike goes.
Mhm.
But it's still super nimble and handles really really well. Just based on how slack the head tube is.
Okay.
Um, and it's worked super well for all the gravel racing. They're getting much more aggressive and like their pack racing is becoming more of a thing in gravel. So
Yeah.
the more like I would say more comfortable bikes, more recreational style geometry, like
Mhm.
the more upright, a little bit. They're a little bit slower, but they're going to be more stable at speed. That's a little. That's not something I'm experiencing on the Ibis because it is so nimble. And
Mhm.
for racing, it's doing the trick really really well.
Cool. And so you're in Belgium right now?
Yes, yeah. Currently,
Yeah.
I'm kind of out in a little bit of a forest in a small town now, but I'm going to be moving to an Airbnb in Leuven, the Finnish city, in a couple days.
So what are you going to do for eating and loading up on fuel for how long do you think the race is going to take you?
For me personally, I'm thinking it's going to be 5:15, 5.5 hours for
Okay.
me, and that's not not close to the front of the race at the end of the day. Um, for the race, I nutrition wise, this is going to be a little bit different from or at least fueling strategy wise,
Uh-huh.
because we're going to have the ability to feed pretty often on this course from like feed zone help from both some of the national team staff and uh, personal friends and soigneurs that
Mhm.
some of us have that are coming to the race. We're
Right.
going to be able to get bottles pretty constantly, so it's
Okay.
going to be they're kind of pretty much whenever you want. So I'm not going to be running any pack, and I'll probably start with like 1.5 bottles because those two climbs that are in the first 25K, like way less than an hour of racing before we hit two pretty crucial 5 minute efforts going
Yeah.
uphill, and we're going to be able to feed right after that as well. So
Uh-huh.
it'll be I'm trying to prioritize speed over this,
Mhm.
and planning out the bottles is it's kind of just whenever you want. But fuel wise in the bottles, we'll be doing probably about 60, 70 grams of carb of mix in the bottles. And
Mhm.
then I'll do 2 flasks of the maple syrup honey concoction that I've been doing for
Uh-huh.
pretty much every race since Unbound.
Okay.
Gets both glucose and fructose, and it sits well in the stomach, and it's relatively inexpensive. And then there'll probably be like 4 or 5 caffeinated gels for the last 2 hours of the race as well.
Yeah. And so you're making your own maple syrup? I used to do that. I really enjoyed it. Making my own maple syrup fuel.
Yeah,
So are you
yeah,
mixing?
it's the way to go because you can. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to add it. So you're doing maple syrup, but are you adding like I used to do maple syrup, and then for caffeine, I would add like matcha powder. I don't know if that nobody followed this advice on that. I don't know if that's good or not. But then, but I would add like maybe maltodextrin powder to it, to add more carb. But anyway, I found the coolest thing about maple syrup that a lot of people don't know is when it gets on your bike or on your hands, is it rinses right off. Like it's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
Because so like Gatorade and the other sugary stuff gets sticky, right? When you get it
Yep.
on you. And maple syrup is the opposite. You get it on you and it just like you can rinse it
Yeah.
right off
It,
and right off your bike. Like you don't have any problems with it at all.
I know, and I've definitely had a fair amount of it on the bike. That's
Yeah.
had to be washed off too. I mix honey with it as well,
Okay. Yeah.
and that and a little bit of table salt, and then put
Okay.
a touch of water in there. I'll have those in the first probably 2 to 3 hours of the race,
Uh-huh.
and then I'll go to caffeine for the end of the
Yeah.
race. I don't like having caffeine at the very beginning because I think it's a little bit harder to maintain the caffeine intake
Uh-huh.
for me
When I
throughout
do
the entire duration.
when I do a little bit too much caffeine, it makes my stomach hurt just a little bit, and then your stomach kind
Yeah.
of contracts a little bit, and then it inhibits fuel absorption. So
Yep.
there's like a balance you have to figure out in training and racing. It's like how much is too much.
Definitely.
And yeah. Okay, so what are you going to eat for food leading up? You've been in Europe a bunch lately, I've noticed,
Yeah.
racing and stuff. So you're familiar. I know it's a lot of different countries and food styles, but like you're pretty familiar with what you could eat. So what's your choices of food leading up to the race?
Yeah. So our race starts at noon, which
Uh,
is
Oh, wow.
pretty awesome.
You can carb load for
Honestly.
that.
Yeah, it's easy. I
Yeah.
can sleep in and still have a full breakfast. I'm
Yeah.
excited for that for sure.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Um, but my pre-race meal is gonna be 3.5 hours before, so eight
Yeah.
thirty.
Hmm.
Yeah, 8:30.
Uh-huh.
8:30 is gonna be pancakes and eggs. That's what I've done for every big race this year. Gets carbohydrates and protein, and just a hair of fat.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the big pre-race meal.
Uh-huh.
And then probably on the start line, I'll have a non-caffeinated gel, probably like 10 minutes before we start. Um, and then it's just going to be electrolytes to sip on from breakfast to the race.
Okay.
For having diabetes, it's a little bit easier to manage when
Mhm.
it's like I can break it up like that,
Yeah.
um, just so that I don't have to like constantly worry about like both carbohydrates, stress, and whatever other chaos might be happening before
Yeah.
the world championship starts, um, to worry about managing blood sugar on top of
Yeah. So, like you brought up,
that.
one of the most interesting things about your racing is when we saw you, because you're a Texas racer that we would see at, for example, the excruciation exam, which is one of the most insane races that I've ever had the misfortune of keeping to sign up for over and over again for some reason. The first time I did it, I swear I'd never do it again. It
Yeah.
took me 10 years to do that race again because it was so hard. And
It's
then,
brutal.
you were on the podium, not for that race. I think maybe the Fredericksburg race. And then
I think it was I think I met Emily at the Fredericksburg
yeah,
race.
and
Yeah.
Emily's type 1 diabetic, and either you or me was like, dude, he's got an insulin pump. And that just blew us
Yep.
away that the winner is type 1 diabetic.
Yep.
And like you brought up, the different strategies. I mean, you don't want to make too big of a deal out of it, right?
Yeah.
Because
I mean, yeah.
yeah, you just don't. It's like you don't draw too much attention to it, but also you want to also let people know that you can be diabetic, especially type 1, which is the most difficult kind, and like also continue on with life and still be even a pro cyclist, which is amazing. So I
Yeah.
think Emily has
Exactly.
some
Thank you.
questions for you.
Yeah, I
You're making
can't
a
find.
list of
Well, I
questions. Are
can't
you
find
ready
my
yet?
phone. So that's
I hear the
real.
phone alarm going off.
Awesome.
Well, I really
Okay. So when I told her I was interviewing
Awesome.
you, she got all excited because she had some questions she wanted to ask you. Do you have anything?
Awesome. I'm all for it.
So just like Brett said, I don't want to focus on all the, because I don't like it when everybody's like, focus on just me because I'm type 1, but as a type 1,
No,
like
of
you are
course. And
honestly, I mean, you're like one of my heroes, I guess, to see all the stuff you've done and not let anything hold you back. It's just amazing.
thank you. Thank
So,
you. I appreciate that.
quick questions. What kind of pump do you
Okay.
have?
So currently using a tandem pump. I've tried excuse me. I've tried a couple different ones in the past, and that's currently the one I'm using. It works based off of the loop system that syncs with the Dexcom. I've had really good luck using that, especially for helping manage blood sugars like overnight for sure, and on travel days. That's been super nice.
Yeah.
I will say, unfortunately, I had a little bit of a hiccup with my pump. I may have dropped it a couple times at the beginning of
Oh,
my trip,
yeah.
and unfortunately, it was because I go through the U.S. healthcare system. The U.S. they were not able to get me a pump here in Europe
Oh.
since I broke mine like 2 months ago. So I've been back on daily injections with long-acting insulin since then. It's one of those things.
One of those, I'm on a tandem also with a Dexcom, and I did Medtronic forever.
You
And
gonna
then
send them your pump
no,
for
well, I
race day?
can. You want my sure, whatever you want.
Thank you, but it's at this point we're good.
Yeah.
So I'm on that too. But so when you do, when the tandem, when you have it on you, do you
Mhm.
get your sugar on your, do you have a watch, or how are you able to see what your sugar is when you're racing? So you're not having to like pull it out.
So what's super cool is that I've been using a Garmin head unit for all my gravel racing this year.
Okay.
There's a through the Garmin Connect IQ store. There's an app you can load onto the Garmin that will basically relay what the Dexcom is reading from your phone to the Garmin. So I have that as a data field on my Garmin. It's not perfect. There's some hiccups, and I do have to have my phone in my pocket while I'm racing, like even
Yeah.
for the race this weekend. But doing that, I can have my glucose on the head unit all day, every day. And that, like, being an athlete with diabetes, that's a very important metric to keep your eyes on. And when it's on the head unit, so you don't have to be fiddling around with your pockets or your phone or your
Yeah.
watch or anything, it's a huge perk.
Mhm.
One of the kids on Kai's high school mountain bike team was type 1, and he had a Apple Watch. And because I asked
Yep.
him the same question, he's like, my hands are always on the handlebars. And I'm like, oh, that does make sense,
I
doesn't it?
remember when they
Yeah.
came out with that ability for Garmin to have that field. I work in IT and
Mhm.
I'm a nerd, so I got it to show on my watch, but this was like a year ago or a year and a half ago, maybe. So I didn't have any
Yeah.
numbers because you'd have to get one of the wireless readers and stuff like that. But the fact that the
Yep.
field existed,
Yeah.
and it could be on my
It's
watch,
like,
any Garmin device, or my bike computer, I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is finally
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm excited. I do want to experiment more with that because it would
Mhm.
be nice if I didn't have my phone in my pocket while I was racing.
Mhm.
And I know the new Apple Watch that just came out doesn't isn't it's not a relay. It'll read directly from the Dexcom. So I might be trying out an Apple Watch at some point soon. But I think the new Garmin watch can do that as well. So this is something once I finish my racing for this year, that's like one of the first things on my list to kind of look a little bit further into.
Have you ever had any issues with losing signal and not being able to connect to each other? Because we did
Yeah.
a 70-something mile backpacking trip up in the mountains of New Mexico, and that was my issue. It couldn't connect, and I'm like just going off
Yeah.
field and the
Yeah.
old prick of my finger, and I was just wondering. So you know what I mean.
Oh,
Um,
100%. That unfortunately it's not rare that that happens. And I think with, like, especially in a race, everyone's got a head unit. There's a bunch of different Bluetooth signals going out. It's
yeah.
like, and it's a side loaded app. It's not like purposely built for that. So I am not in IT. I'm not in tech, so I don't know what's interfering with it there. So, but there are, I'm not gonna say regular dropouts, but it's not uncommon to see that.
Yeah.
Can anybody else monitor you? Like, you know how the Dexcom has the ability to send other people what your sugar is.
Mhm.
so do you have somebody that monitors you also in addition to yourself?
No.
Listening? No. Okay.
No,
I was
I
hoping
don't
you
have
said
that.
yes,
I don't want to
because
burden.
some of us don't like it. Like I had him do
What?
that, and he was like, "You're waking me up too much. I can't. The alarm's
Oh,
going off like
that.
crazy."
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, okay, thanks for love you too, honey."
I'm right
That's
next
great.
to you. I'm aware.
Okay,
Oh
I was just
man,
wondering.
you
So
hear the Dexcom and the phone at the same
Yes.
time.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
hear her not hearing all of it all at the same time. Yeah.
anyway, I think what I already answered some of it a while ago. How long? When were you diagnosed again? I was just curious.
I was diagnosed when I was 2 years old, so it's over it's 26 and something
Oh,
years
wow.
by now.
You know no
I
different.
think.
You didn't know
I
no
don't.
less before. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
No,
was
I don't.
23 and I'm 49, so it's been 26 years for me. It was a weird age.
Wow.
So, but anyway, well, yes, that's all of my diabetic questions. So,
Okay.
yes. And I always get so excited whenever I
Yeah.
see that you've posted something or they're talking about you, and I'm like, what happened? You know, so you
Thank
more
you. I
than
appreciate it.
anybody else, even like Keegan or anybody, just
Yeah.
because I can relate to you in that way.
Yeah. You're so
Thank
relatable.
you.
You're
Oh,
also racing the same races here,
That's
that we've been doing. So tell me a little about this race. You didn't do, I messaged you before excruciation exam this year and this last year, or it's around Christmas time. It's notoriously freezing cold. And you said you weren't
yeah.
going to do it, that you were going to do this other race. What's this other? It's like some sort of gravel grinder, because that's on my radar
The
a little bit as well, too.
So I believe that weekend was Red Rock Roubaix,
Uh-huh.
which is a race put on in Austin, or it's not an official race, but it's if
It
you're in
becomes a
Austin,
race.
it's a race, and it is. There was prize money, and
Oh,
I
okay. It's a
went.
race.
I
Yeah.
did not go home with an empty pocket.
Okay.
But it's a race put on in Austin. It was run by, I think it was B3 Promotions previously, but Chris Tolley put it on. I think it was last year and this year.
Mhm.
And it's uh, starts in Austin, goes out past Manor, kind of north of McDade, and does a big gravel loop, and then comes back through Manor and then on the bike path back into Austin and finishes in front of Eastside Pedal Pushers. It's a like it was a massive turnout this year. I want to say it was like 200 or 300 people that
Oh,
like showed up
wow.
to start,
Oh, cool.
and Tolly did put up some prize money for the podium as well, and I was like, oh, that's the hometown race. I can't say no to that.
Yeah.
Um, and
So if I've
yeah,
done,
happily walked away with the top step there.
all right.
awesome.
Yeah. So if I'm kind of tired of doing excruciation exam, is this a race that maybe you recommend doing?
It's a fun day.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. Whether you're going to race it or not,
Uh-huh.
it's really cool roads. Hopefully, it's not freezing cold. It was a little chilly this year, but it wasn't too bad. But it's cool because you're doing this like it's kind of like alley cat style, like because it's not an official race, and
Mhm.
you're racing on the bike path on the way back, which
Oh
can get
God.
a little hectic.
Oh my
But
God. Yeah. That's
it's
kind of fun though. Yeah.
it was super fun,
Yeah. That's
and
a different kind
it's
of
kind
bike
of
skills.
definitely, and
I like
it's a staple in the Austin calendar. I'm hoping they don't overlap this year because I'd like
uh
to do excruciation exam this coming season.
Yeah. This past year, I don't remember. The weather was pretty good. I don't remember if anything really stood out for excruciation
I didn't
exam
need
this
to go
past year.
because oh no, I did.
You were
I was
there.
talking about Googling.
Yeah. I know my headphones died with about an hour and a half to go, and that was
Oh.
miserable for me. Because I'm listening to
Oof,
music
yeah,
and
that
I'm out
last.
there for the long haul, so uh
Oh
um
man, yeah.
so what do you do training wise? Oh, I got two more questions for you. So training,
Yeah.
get up to the power because Kai would have loved to have been on the show.
Mhm.
But then he is returning from Wichita Falls doing collegiate racing. It's
Mhm.
Texas State
Awesome.
and MSU and A&M and
Mhm.
even some people from Arkansas and stuff like that.
Okay.
We're racing in Wichita Falls this weekend doing 2 days of mountain bike racing.
Yeah.
And
It's like,
but for he's still a young pro and trying to build up power to become, you know, like higher caliber pro, what kind of training do you recommend for people like that? And what should he be focusing on? Anybody that's listening to this, focusing on to get up to the kind of wattage to be able to be at the front of these races for longer. And then
Yeah,
also, I want to talk to you about how to do the videoing that you're doing. How do you do your video setup, and what kind of camera do you use, and batteries and stuff like that?
definitely. Yeah. So training wise, and this is applying to like road racing and gravel,
Mhm.
kind of longer duration stuff. This might be a little bit different for like XCO style racing, but base season I think is the most important part of my training year. It's a lot of hours sitting in zone 2 and zone 3, just riding.
Mhm.
It's I at this point I find it really pleasant. Like I really enjoy that time of year because it's just riding steady, listening to music, podcasts,
Right.
doing really cool loops because you're like you go out for longer duration rides, and I try and do as many new roads as possible. Like every day I have those.
Okay.
I think it's pretty easy to do that in Texas because the terrain isn't like we don't have to worry about like long climbs, long descents that might affect what you're going to get training wise out of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like strictly staying in those zones while you're doing your like if you have a 5 hour zone 2 ride, you'll have your warm up, your cool down, but then the 4.5 hours in between that are zone 2, like
Yeah. And you say
just
like
straight
you
up
go
zone
out
2.
and you try to find newer roads to explore as part of the training?
Yeah, I think that's just me for me to like have
Yeah.
fun and not totally crack my head in December.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
think I agree because it's like to put in 4 or 5 hours, like the more varied the different places to go. And I think gravel
yeah.
bike helps a ton with that. And also
Oh,
quiet
100.
roads, if you're on a road bike, you can go and
Yeah,
get, if you do different places, then the time goes by faster.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely. No, and I think that for sure. And it's making sure you get like a solid base of doing those because at when you're racing, you need to be able to recover at like kind of a high, like a high power output. And if
Mhm.
you're comfortable in those like zone 2, zone 3 zones, it makes it easier in my eyes. I
Okay.
there's also some I don't quote me on the science on this, but there's been studies showing that like if you have done enough zone 2 training properly, it can like marginally increase your FTP as well,
Oh yeah.
because your mitochondria and cells are more efficient. So in theory, therefore, you can push out a higher FTP without like actually training at like those threshold zones. Article I read, and I may have just read the headline on it, but I do distinctly remember seeing something on this.
I live
And
and die by that, and it is 100%
yeah,
true. You
yeah,
can do zone 2. I interviewed Phil Mapatone, the guy who trained
yeah,
you know, the leading Ironman back in the day. And yeah, you do zone 2, a little bit of zone 3, just tons of it. And you actually build more mitochondria. And
yeah,
then the next thing you know, you're just have crazy high power at a low heart rate so that you can
yeah.
recover and then save yourself for the punchy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And that's super important for gravel road, I think
Yeah.
any type of racing. And then like the closer we get to race day, there's definitely be some higher intensity stuff.
Mhm.
And I know there's a bunch of different training methods. There's all the Norwegian stuff, doing like double threshold days.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about any of that to know which one's the way to go,
Uh-huh.
or like when to really start implementing this.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something I'm going to start diving into this off season.
Yeah.
But I think that those, for me, the couple of months of solid zone 2, zone 3 work are a staple and have, at least at the beginning of the year, when I make sure I'm like checking all the boxes and I don't
Uh-huh.
get distracted by racing and travel and sickness.
Yeah.
It's like the performance is there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, the Norwegian method, there's a recent show that came out talking about, you know, why does the Norwegian method work so well? And then the funny thing was, they did a huge meta study of all the different types of training all around the world and why are the Norwegians so good? Well, it's just like Chinese food. In China, they don't call it Chinese food. It's just called food. And in Norway, they don't call it the Norwegian method. They just call it training. They don't have a
Yeah.
name for it. And what they found is actually the Norwegians, the Scandinavians are more likely to adhere to proper training protocol. They're actually more likely to follow the instructions. And Westerners, like Americans and other people from all over, just kind of we get this crazy idea and we'll do something different for a while, and then this, and then we'll do that, and then we'll do this. And then the Norwegians just follow the instructions, and then they end up with the best results. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the camera. Like, how are you able
Yeah.
to video these races? And like, I noticed like what happens to everybody is like sometimes the camera will die, sometimes people will, because they only have so much battery life, they'll only film the very end. I've noticed that like you seem to have maybe two videos for a lot of races. You'll have the beginning or some like highlights, but also you'll have then later you'll put out the whole 6 hours or something like that. Like is it, do you ever do that with, you manage to film like the entire race sometimes and then put out, that's a lot of battery life on a camera.
Yeah.
So like how
Yeah.
do you do that?
It's
And also what kind of benefits do you get from being I'm trying to encourage Kai, to video his races, because if you want to get sponsors and stuff like that. So don't you get a whole lot more attention from sponsors and visibility from having a YouTube channel with the videos?
definitely, yeah. So to answer the first part of the question, it's it's a pretty silly, simple hack, but you just tape an external, and this is actually the first time I've like actually said this, but it's just taping
We'll
an
edit this
external
out.
battery pack under the stem. Yeah, you can keep it in, it's all good, or we can just bleep over it. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
taping an external battery pack under the stem, and then you start the Garmin or GoPro, and
Uh-huh.
then plug in the external battery pack
Uh-huh.
once it's started, and it'll basically keep charging while it's recording. And if you have a
Oh,
SD card that's if you
well,
have an SD card that's big enough,
how do you keep sweat and stuff from getting in there?
I I am probably just going to be replacing cameras every couple months.
Okay.
Like between sweat, rain, mud, dust, dirt, and then like the rocks that get kicked up. Like
Yeah.
actually, I have my GoPro right here, and I don't know
Uh-huh.
if you can see it, but like the back of the screen's like all cracked, and it's like
Yeah.
half of it's not working at this point, but it still records.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And it's for me at this point, it's an expense I kind of have to like keep into the
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
because it is a very important part of being an athlete now. I think even the athletes at the top of the sport, like granted, they're probably going to have like media managers and people doing it for them, but
Mhm.
outreach and media and your persona is huge, and that's how you connect with people. um like we're living in a really digital age, so having a presence online that represents who you are and what you want to like promote to sponsors, is it's hugely important because you can connect with people from every corner of the world. Every
Mhm.
corner of the world there's internet, and that's a big audience. That's a really big audience.
So, what's your workflow look like? So do you record a race? Do you ever record your training ride? I've
No,
gotten into recording my training rides, and I've noticed that because I don't race as much as you do, but the man, the editing, the video, well, it is a ton of fun to watch what
yeah,
happens, but it takes a lot of time and computer
it
power.
does.
So, let's say you come back from a race, and then how fast you try to get like, I've noticed it's almost like a race to see who can get up the highlight video from, let's say, Valley of Tears, the fastest. And then um and then later, the longer videos start coming out. So do you try to get as soon as you can, like while you're recovering from the race, you try to edit the video as part of your
Yeah,
recovery time, and you're sitting there eating
yeah,
some recovery food and editing video at
definitely.
the same time?
Yeah, usually what I'm doing. So I did a race, I guess last weekend,
Uh-huh.
like a week ago from yesterday,
Yeah.
in Girona, where I was staying for the month or two previous to that.
Uh-huh.
So did a race, got home, before I got out of the shower, so you can't edit or I do all my editing in Final Cut, and I can't edit or export a video if the files are still on the SD card. They need to be on either an external hard drive or on the computer.
Mhm.
So the first thing I do is transfer those files from the GoPro to either my external memory or my computer.
Mhm.
And while that's transferring, then I'll shower, make food, and
Oh,
usually
that's
by the
fast.
time,
Huh?
yeah, because it takes like the amount of time, like the editing isn't too bad, thankfully, on these full race videos. It's the export time,
Yep.
so that Unbound video was like almost 10 hours long, and it
Yep.
took like over 24 hours of my computer just
Yeah.
exporting that file to
Yeah.
get that one full race file.
Yeah.
And granted, it's a little bit shorter for like a 4 or 5 hour race, but still, like it's just a lot of time just waiting for your computer to compress all those GoPro files into one file that you can post on YouTube. So I
Yeah.
want to get that going as quickly as possible, because I think the 48 hours after the event it's very important to have something out in those 48 hours,
Yeah.
if you want to capture a lot of the attention from like people that were either looking at the event, or like
Yeah.
paying attention to what's happening in bike racing at the moment. Um,
It's the
and that's
race
always
after the race.
yeah, it's huge, and it'd be nice to have a faster computer, or like something to encode this quicker, and maybe that's something I'm looking at down the road now that this is becoming a very real thing in
Uh-huh.
my racing workflow.
Yeah.
Um, but it's as soon as possible. And in the event I'm unable to get a full race video compiled like quickly, I'll
Mhm.
usually either export like the first 10, 15, 20 kilometers of the race, something that's like a 20-30 minute video, to like post like either the next day, or like maybe that same day if I can get it done quick enough.
Yeah.
And then I'll do the full race video like 2 days after that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. That's definitely the right way to do it, is to get highlights out first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because yeah, definitely right after a race, everybody goes to YouTube, because a lot of like Lifetime is the only one that seems to have decent coverage of a
Yeah.
race pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And nobody else seems to have, but the pros have the best race coverage of
Yeah.
anybody. Y'all are the source of the really good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And Lifetime's done it's been really cool to see Lifetime put so much effort and emphasis on producing high quality content as quickly as possible. Because I think that only elevates the people that are like kind of working in that space as well. Like
Mm.
a rising tide raises all ships. And if you're
Yeah.
kind of doing a similar thing that's not identical, it's like it garners interest from that as well.
Yeah.
It was fascinating because you videoed Valley of Tears, right? When you went through the Bat Tunnel.
Yep. Mhm.
It's all
Yep.
I so wanted to go see that. And then, it's not the same to hear about it than to actually go through it. But just different things and the beautiful areas and
Yeah.
some of the crashes and
Yeah, because
whatnot.
we were like, it's a tunnel. It was dark.
Yeah,
Like we
and I'm
were at
like,
race
Yeah.
speed.
Yeah, it was a tunnel. There was like sand. There were sand dunes in it. I ran into
Yeah, you're
something,
right. That's a
and
good
then
way to
had
describe it, is
yeah,
there was like ashy sand dunes in it.
yeah. It was
In
just
the
it was
dark.
bizarre. Yeah, yeah. Very
Yeah, you
bizarre.
hit them suddenly, you're like, what's
Hmm.
going on? And yeah, it's so short, there's no point in carrying a light. You're not going to carry that extra weight of a light.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
maybe somebody
I think most of us didn't even know about that as well. And I was like, oh, this is I wasn't expecting this.
And there's a turn, there's a gradual turn. So you have to go for a
Yep.
little bit before you see the end of the tunnel. Sorry, I'm making you miss it. Yeah,
that's
we're gonna
right.
have to go back. You
Yeah.
you can do the race.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on my calendar for next year too.
Oh yeah?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I
excited
love
for
that
that.
little town. That town was so funny, man. Turkey, Texas.
Yeah. Turkey, Texas. That's really out there. There's not
That was
much
out
out
there.
there. Yeah.
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 It was a cool town.
Mhm.
You have any other questions for
Well,
Justin?
and maybe you already asked him, but
Mhm.
with our son that's his passion, is biking and stuff. And you said you had a road biking background more, right? Is that what you said a while
Yeah.
ago? Um, when you were like in college, how did you balance that? Like with training and not and
So I I either thankfully or unthankfully, I did not go to college. I had the opportunity to start racing full time, like right out of high school, and I jumped on that.
I would have taken
So
that
I
too.
Ty wants to quit college now so that he can just race. So that's why I was
it,
wondering
Yeah.
how that worked out for you.
unfortunately it is very unsustainable, and you are working like you're training 5, 6, maybe more hours a day,
Uh-huh.
and then you're trying to make money on top of that, and that's all you're doing, and then you're racing
Mhm.
like from basically from February through September, October. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But like the cards aligned for me, and I had the opportunity to race like pretty like very well supported.
Uh-huh.
And it made sense for me to do because I was like, maybe I can do this. I'm
Yeah.
like, we'll see. And I was like, college, like I can go back to that. And I'm actually looking at college courses now to try and like figure out getting a degree to get a real job
Yeah.
in line with bike racing as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Are you yeah, if you were thinking about going to college, and then what kind of degree you would look at getting, and then would it to be to stay in the bike industry? I think having
I
worked
yeah.
being a cyclist and a triathlete and all that, and then not working in the sports industry is so frustrating because I'm surrounded by people that have no clue and don't care about, endurance sports at all. And it would be
Yeah,
so great to work at, even REI, like someplace that's outdoorsy, at least,
yeah.
the corporate world. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to stay in the outdoor and specifically cycling industry. And
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of like in cycling, at least it's a lot of knowing people, and through racing I've been able to meet a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life. So I think there are opportunities out there,
I think
if I
so
were
too.
to pursue them with a little more emphasis. But like using that with like maybe either a marketing or an advertising degree,
Mhm.
to kind of be where I'd want to be, within the industry.
Yeah, that's what Kai's doing. He started off physiology and
Exercise sports science.
exercise and sports science. And
Nice.
but he wasn't really that into it. And he came to us and he's like, I think I want to change majors. And he was kind of like embarrassed or shy or didn't want to tell us,
Oh,
And we
yeah.
were like, dude, lots of people change majors all the time, that you don't even know when you get there. You just pick something.
Hmm.
And to stay with something when you don't really like it is terrible. So yeah, absolutely change. And he changed to
Business.
business,
Yeah.
and so that he can do marketing and things like
Nice.
that in there as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of offshoots off that as well. Like it's something that interests me, and I also know it's pretty transferable to a lot of other
Mhm.
like little sects. I know like data analyst is like a it kind of falls under it, and there's and like social media managers, marketing managers,
Yep.
like market analysis. There's a lot of things that kind of fall under that umbrella, but that's it's a avenue, uh,
Mhm.
just direction that would interest me a lot. And I think it kind of goes in line with what I've been doing like personally for my own professional career. So
Yeah,
like
making
being able to
videos of
have
your
a
own bike races because you're a privateer business person and you're doing your own social media with video. It's one thing
yeah,
to type something on Twitter or Instagram. It's another one to make your own videos and
yeah,
land your own sponsors. Yeah, you're
yeah,
basically doing your own internship.
yeah. I
Yeah,
that's what it feels like. It's a
yeah,
very unpaid
unpaid
internship, yeah,
internship.
for
Yeah.
myself.
Cool. Well, good luck at the
Yeah.
Thank
race.
you. I
Yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah,
yeah.
thank you
I'm
guys for
so
taking the
excited to
time.
talk to somebody that's on the team.
Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be fun for sure. At the very least, it's World Championships in Belgium, so it's gonna be
Yeah,
hectic, fast, and a wild day for sure.
yeah, that's going to be so cool. The country they selected for it this year. That's so awesome for it to be in
Yeah,
Belgium.
this was like a dream I had as a
Yeah,
little kid when I was like thinking about just like getting into bike racing was
yeah, to race in Belgium or
race.
Worlds.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man,
Racing in this region,
yeah,
Flanders, Belgium, the Netherlands, at an elite level race, and the fact that it's a world championship for the U.S. elite teams, insane. Never
yeah,
thought I would be here, and I'm very thankful, honored, and ready to give it everything I have.
yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll let you get to bed. It's later there than it is here.
Yeah, just a touch, but
Yeah, just a touch. All right. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah,
Of course, guys. Thank you.
right.
Yeah, and I'll see you guys back in Texas soon.
Yeah, cool.
sounds
All right.
good.
Bye.
All right, bye.
All right. See you guys.